Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sly Fox Sports podcast. I'm Aaron Nix. Jeremy Miller is still on hiatus of sorts. He's basically crying because Arsenal beat Chelsea. Sorry. Anyway, that was good times. It was really good times. And off the back of that fantastic 3-1 defeat of the Blue Scum, I have dragged in arguably our most exciting guest we'll ever have. Definitely a lot more than any of these so-called professional athletes. He is the ultimate professional athlete of Cornwall. And of course, while I say professional athlete, I mean a man who is very good at berating all of you. Steve Neal has kindly taken time out of his fatherhood schedule to join us to discuss the ups and downs of being an Arsenal fan over the last few years. Steve, welcome to Sly Fox, mate. Your first appearance on this awful podcast.
No, mate. Thanks for having me and giving me a chance to come on and chat some shit about how brilliant / terrible it is to be an Arsenal fan in 2020.
Yeah, this comes obviously off the back of Arsenal a couple of days ago beating Chelsea 3-1, righting the ship, sort of, or at least just getting one decent win under their belt. With Mikel Arteta as manager. Obviously, the idea of this podcast, very similar to another one that we've got with Alex that's lined up, is just to kind of talk about what it's like being an Arsenal fan. And also, I don't know anybody who knows more about Arsenal Football Club from a fan's perspective than yourself. This is not Arsenal Fan TV, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. So if you're looking for enraged mixed race people, go and see my WrestlePlug channel. That's about it, really. For me, obviously, everybody knows who's watched this that I used to be a very, passionate Arsenal fan and have sort of stepped away over the years. You have, for the better part of the last 10 years, persisted with this insane fandom of yours, and I admire you for that. What's the last 10 years in particular been like being an Arsenal fan before we kind of get to the more modern day problems that they're currently suffering with?
I think during the early part of that time when we had Wenger's Project Youth, so we had Fabregas, we had Nasri, we had Alex Song, we had young Theo Walcott, Rosicky was at the club, Abu Diaby was at the club, Van Persie, Adebayor. It was an exciting time. It felt like that there was a future. This was going to be a team that would stick together for 7 or 8 seasons, grow, mature, and become a dominant team. Because on a technical level, we were far and away better than anyone else in the Premier League. What we lacked was a bit of physical bite, a bit of experience in the side. And that's why we were kind of behind the Chelseas and the Manchester Uniteds. We were ahead of everyone else. We were ahead of Tottenham. We were ahead of, Man City weren't a force at that point. Liverpool weren't a force really at that point domestically. It was just that lack of maturity really. And then that team started to be broken up. And it's been about what's then happened has been financial mismanagement under the Kroenkes. It's been awful recruitment at times. Dick Law, when he was in charge of recruitment with Arsene Wenger and stepped into the David Dean role in terms of working with Wenger on transfers, was an absolute shambles for the most part. The lack of investment for a long time. Obviously, we had the stadium debt. We had a lot of things going on that forced us to sell our best players. So for Arsene Wenger to keep us consistently in the Champions League and in the top 4 for as many years as he did, and end the trophyless drought with back-to-back FA Cups was amazing. Like, it was an amazing achievement.
When I spoke to Alex about Arsenal, one thing that we both sort of felt was very much the case was Arsenal's decline has been a very slow, gradual. It hasn't just been like, it's kind of been like this and then come down ever since 2004, because I kind of made this case that was the perfect. It was the perfect season. They didn't lose a game. They obviously went 49 not out, and in that period, you saw some of the best football, pure, free flowing attacking football that's ever been played in the modern era of football. Very much for a lot of people, the kind of blueprint for how teams like Barcelona, Real Madrid, and everything would play after that, when they, of course, got their hands on some of the best players the world has ever seen. Do you think that like Arsenal set themselves up for failure by being invincible? Because there was, after that, there is no ability to go further up unless, of course, the Invincible is winning every single game, which, of course, is the least plausible thing that will ever happen in football. Does it feel like they've set themselves up for failure a little bit?
There was definitely a hangover of a few years where you were in the shadow of that team. If you're Adebayor coming into the side at 22 and told, you've got to replace Thierry Henry, or you're Robin van Persie coming into the side, you've got to replace Bergkamp because you're Dutch. Or if you're, Fabregas trying to replace Patrick Vieira, we were assembling a very different footballing side in terms of style and in terms of age profile. So it was we were set ourselves up for failure, but there was a very conscious decision to move away from the Invincibles. And I wouldn't say that the decline started in 2004. I think it was 2006 when we lost the Champions League final. That's when the team really was broken up. We lost Pires, we lost Ljungberg, we'd lost Vieira the season before, we lost Ashley Cole, we lost Highbury. Henry lasted one more season. We'd lost Bergkamp as well. He retired. It just felt like that side just disintegrated then over the next sort of 12 months. And what we were left with was a core of very young players, and the players that we were bringing in, even the experienced players we were bringing in, Scalacci, Gallas, which did not work. We were signing inferior players because that's the budget we had. We weren't looking at the top shelf. We were looking 4 or 5 shelves down and hoping that they could improve over time. And, Mikel Silvestri, we brought in some absolute dross at that point. So over time, we improved. Some young players got better. We brought in the odd gem, but it was, I think 2006 was where the decline steadily began, where even after that point, for the next 5 or 6 years, we played really good football, but we were never really competitive for the title. But we were kind of a lot of people's second team because we were playing the best football or the most attractive football in the league. And then it was Fabregas was gone and Nasri was gone, and it was another cycle of, again, just replacing them with inferior players.
The biggest knock that Arsenal always gets, like me and Alex said this, like the pile on from the media has been, obscene, frankly. Most teams that have had this period of somewhat success, or at least regular top 4 appearances, wouldn't be getting this level of abuse, particularly when you consider Arsenal. For me, Arsenal's budget, Arsenal's setup is obviously not nearly as powerful as like a Man City or even a Spurs at this point. The amount of money that's available to these clubs that they're able to spend in relation to what Arsenal can do. And yet Arsenal seems to be the team that cops all of that abuse, more so because I think at this point it's just kind of fashionable to shit on Arsenal, and it's fun more so than it is an actual critique of their style of football. The soul aspect of football is always about money, and I'm always curious what you think. You're still a passionate Arsenal fan. Would you be on board with a new owner, somebody who's willing to inject a sheer level of financial power like Man City have, or would you rather support a team that still maintains its kind of soul in so many aspects? Or are you happy to kind of almost sell out values a little bit to ensure a greater level of success?
The problem is that we're not doing either because we've got, a horrible billionaire owner who just doesn't inject the money into the club that he could to take us on to that competitive level at the top, because he wants us to be a profitable source of income for him to use on his other franchises and on his other business interests. And we are profitable. We've been the most profitable Premier League club for a long time. I personally would prefer us to be a well-run business that isn't going to be a case of when an owner decides to up and leave because they've got some shiny new toy somewhere else, that we get kind of left in the dirt. You know, if you look at, you know, the Pozzo model then in Italy, where they've got Udinese, they got Udinese to be in the Champions League. Then they bought Watford. Well, finishing 15th in the Premier League, it gets you more money than doing anything in Serie A. So all of their money went into Watford. And Udinese fell right down the league to become, you know, an also ran in Italy from being a top 4 club. So again, it's looking at what kind of investment you want. I would rather be a well-run, self-sustainable business that doesn't need that outside injection, but can be competitive through smart recruitment. Leicester have got a billionaire owner, but they don't spend above their means. They're sensible. They drive a very hard bargain when they sell players to make sure they get top dollar, you know, 80 million for Harry Maguire, etc. You know, 50 odd million for Riyad Mahrez. They drive a hard bargain for their top players, and then they use that money wisely to bring in two, you know, we're going to now bring in, you know, Soyuncu, for instance, who's come in and done great. You know, we sell Kante, we're going to bring in Didi in for a little amount of money, but he's going to go on and be brilliant. We're going to bring Harvey Barnes through. That's a great model. And again, even when you talk about Tottenham, Tottenham have spent far more building their stadium than we did. Obviously, in an age where they've got far higher TV revenue to balance it out, but they're still able to spend wisely, invest properly. They can still go and spend 50 million on Lo Celso, 70 million on Ndombele. They spend wisely. They spend their money well. And I think that's the difference. Tottenham have got their recruitment right more often than not, whereas Arsenal have got their recruitment, it's been very inconsistent.
That kind of segues nicely for me, because I want to talk about what's currently wrong. Now, obviously, to beat Chelsea, and for a lot of people, that feels like that could be the spark, but we don't know that yet because we haven't seen results, obviously, after the fact. So, you know, it's a one moment thing and it's great. But ultimately, there's a lot of problems right now, whether you look at the tactics that the manager has incorporated into the style of football that Arsenal have played this season, whether it be the money that he spent on players that may not well have panned out, signings that have been brought in. I know you're particularly hot on a couple of guys that have been brought in and frankly, don't really deserve to be in the team at the moment with the current, you know, lack of form that they're showing. There are a lot of different things that need to change, I think, for Arsenal to become more of a successful team. Not necessarily a Premier League title contender, but at least a team that contends or pushes and is in the mix with the bigger names in this division. So I guess, where do you start? Where do you break it down? Like, you've mentioned, obviously, the fact that a lot of these teams have invested wisely. I suppose a lot of people will make the argument Arsenal have actually spent a fair amount of money this season, you know, particularly on Pepe. Where do we start in terms of trying to untangle this hysterical amount of Christmas lights that is Arsenal's problems right now?
Well, last season, when Arteta came in, his remit was to improve us defensively. You know, we were leaking goals under Wenger and Emery. We're easy to play against. So let's improve at the back. And he did that. He switched to the back three. He sat Xhaka and Ceballos very deep. There wasn't a lot of space behind us. There wasn't a lot of space between the lines. And we ground out wins. We ground our way to the FA Cup and to the Community Shield. He then signed players in Gabriel and Thomas Partey, and thought, okay, now I can go to the way I want to play, which is a back 4-3-3, essentially, a back 4, 3 in midfield. We can make it work and be a little bit more expansive. The problem is that there still isn't a balance to the team. You know, Partey has played a couple of games. He's been injured. That's unlucky for Arteta. The reality is that with him out of the team, we should have gone back to the back three. because you play Granit Xhaka in a midfield three in front of a back four. We've been doing that since he arrived at the club 4, 5, 6 years ago, however long it's been. And he's always been awful, exposed. He's not mobile enough. You play Danny Ceballos in there, and Ceballos is a good footballer, but he's not a top quality footballer. Your centre backs, especially without Gabriel, look suspect. I like Rob Holding, but he's not a top class player. And it comes back to the reality that when you look at the team that won the FA Cup in 2015, and you break down the players who have come out and who has come in. So, Koscielny's dropped out of that side and he's been replaced by David Luiz. That's not an upgrade in any way, shape or form. It's not even a sideways move. That's a downgrade. When you're talking about, you've still got Granit Xhaka in there. When we knew he wasn't good enough in 2016 or 2015, 2017, he's not been good enough at any stage. You move out Theo Walcott, not the most fashionable of Arsenal players historically. I always liked Theo. His record for us was decent. I think he scored over 100 goals in just over 400 games for us. I don't think that's a bad record for a right winger, to be honest. I like Pepe. I think he's got a huge amount of ability. He has no consistency. And for me, Emery, who signed him at the start of last season, made it very clear he didn't want Pepe. He wanted Zaha. And so I just don't think there's been the man management to get the best out of Pepe since he walked into the club. Willian, again, is not an upgrade on anyone. We brought in Mkhitaryan for Sanchez. That didn't work at all. It's just a case of we've got a lot of, they're not bad players. It's not like they're championship standard players. They're decent. It's just a case of they're not good enough for where the ambition of the club is, even where the ambition of the manager is. So tactically, he's got it wrong. There's been a lack of imagination. And again, the signings have been really, really poor. But what we saw against Chelsea, what we saw in the second half against Brighton as well, and what we've seen in the Europa League in particular, is when you have an injection of youth and you give young players an opportunity to come into a side, where essentially it's a case of the experienced players are the ones under pressure. You're just coming in to try and, establish your own career and do well as yourself as an individual. It's not a case of you need to save the team. We've seen Saka be immense. Martinelli come back from injury, hit the ground running. Smith Rowe come into the team, do really, really well. Carry that form across. Hasn't happened every time. It's not happened with Willock or Nketiah so far. But that's been really important for us. Lacazette's just started to get a couple of goals and maybe get himself on a little run. But again, my issues with the way that we play under Emery and to a lesser extent under Arteta, Aubameyang coming from the left with a free role to then move centrally and do what he wants, harder to mark, harder to defend. That's where he gets his goals. When you play him as a number 9, he's marked by 2 centre-backs. And I just feel that he struggles to get involved in the play compared to when he comes from the left. Lacazette, on the other hand, occupies centre-back. He's happy to do the dirty work. He's happy to do the defending from the front, hold the ball up. He might not score the 25 goals a season he was getting at Lyon that we expected him to score when he signed for Arsenal, but he's happy to do the Roberto Firmino role, if you like, where I'm going to press, I'm going to hold the ball up, I'm going to make life difficult for centre-backs, and that will create space for, theoretically, Pepe, although that hasn't necessarily worked, and Aubameyang to come in and score the goals. I think Lacazette does a good job at that. But when then Aubameyang isn't playing well, isn't scoring goals, you just start to struggle. And for me, it's just been a case with Arteta of when he's had to make big decisions, I'm not going to back Guendouzi. I want him out. Not really gone for him. I don't have a problem with him not playing Ozil because I wanted Smith Rowe to get a chance anyway. Bringing in Willian hasn't worked. That's a recruitment path. Signing over 30-year-olds from Chelsea has to stop. Let's not do that anymore. Didn't work with Petr Cech. Didn't work with David Luiz. Hasn't worked with Willian. Let's not do that anymore. So it's not a case that we haven't spent any money. It's a case when you look at that squad and say, who do I think is good enough to be a top 4 player? It's a handful. You know, it's Kieran Tierney, it's Gabriel, it's Partey if we can get him fit, it's Leno, it's Aubameyang if he's on form, and it's the young players supplementing that rather than being the driving force of it. So the issues are that your senior experienced players, quite frankly, are just, they're top 8 players, they're not top 4 players.
You mentioned his name in passing, Mesut Ozil. Now, obviously, with Arsenal's hysterical run of bad form, that was one of the first things people went to, was you've got this guy who cost £42.5 million, basically rotting away over there in the corner. Maybe give him a run out, maybe give him a chance, and, you know, maybe he might inject a little bit of quality. I don't confess to being as passionate about as Arsenal as I once did, although I do still follow them with a fervent amount of passion. I didn't particularly care personally from my perspective, but I'm curious as a diehard fan what your feelings are around Ozil, because ultimately he was sacked because he wasn't playing well enough, particularly considering the investment that was put into him. But at the same time, during that really bad run of form where you're shipping goals and you're losing games to subpar opposition or teams that frankly you should be dispatching with relative ease with the quality you have on the side, was there at any point a feeling from your perspective of why aren't we giving him at least 30, 40 minutes, running him out when games are getting away from us?
I think a couple of the games suited Ozil. It felt like the Everton game suited Ozil in as much as they were playing with a low block and it was easy. We were keeping possession and there was no penetration. It felt like that's the kind of game where Ozil dominates because he's got time on the ball, he's got space to turn, get his head up, and he's going to pick a pass. Look, I've loved Ozil over the years. I think he's been a very, very good player for Arsenal. You know, he's won 3 FA Cups, and when you look, the first season he arrived, a 9-year trophyless drought ended. That's not a coincidence. We can talk about whether he deserved 350 grand a week. We can talk about, you know, what the situation was, the context of the fact we were losing Sanchez. We could have lost Ozil on a free. We had to keep him to make a statement. We were keeping our best players. You know, the fact that Emery straight away didn't fancy him. Arteta gave him a run. Is he out of the team because of poor form, or is it because he endangered some of our corporate interests in China with a tweet about genocide of Rohingya Muslims? Or is it the fact that, you know, he has made, you know, given interviews to the press that you think maybe he shouldn't have done in terms of, you know, demanding a first team place, essentially. I think there's a lot of different facets and moving parts to it. Again, he refused to take a pay cut when COVID hit, when the majority of the rest of the squad agreed. By the way, Ozil was proved right because he said, I don't trust that you won't sack a bunch of people. And suddenly 40 or 50 people got laid off, including the fucking mascot. So Ozil was kind of right not to trust the guys behind the scenes. Would I have him in the squad? I would have registered him. I'm not saying I'd have him on the bench, but I would have him in the 25. You can't tell me that we need as many keepers as we've got in that 25. You can't tell me that we need Shkodran Mustafi in that 25. But I would prefer to give the opportunities to Smith Rowe ahead of him. And look, I was someone who thought Willian was going to work out. I thought Willian was going to come in and get assists, score goals, bring his experience to the team and give us what we needed. And essentially be for us what Ozil used to be, or what Arteta won't let Ozil be again. But Ozil's not been in great form for a while, so I don't have a major issue with Ozil not playing. He's not the long-term answer. He's obviously leaving the club in the summer, at the end of his contract. So it's not a case of we need to look to him for answers. We need to find the next answers. And for me, I like Smith Rowe. I like Joe Willock. I think he's got ability. So I'd rather look to those guys than Ozil. But sure, I mean, I would have him registered so you can say against an Everton, actually, you know what, let's throw him on because we need to unlock a tight defence. It's a difficult one. He's always going to be divisive, Ozil. But it feels to me that he's had his time with us. He's done very, very well. He's definitely underwhelmed at times. But it's overdue that it comes to an end now, and it's kind of really, it's finishing very sadly for a player who's been a really good player for it.
The season, obviously, I don't think any Arsenal fan expected to find themselves in this position, 15th, 16th, just, around the Christmas period. That's a rough and a very bitter pill to swallow. And it's obviously Arsenal's worst start, I believe, since 74, 75, that kind of region, which actually coincides with Lincoln's greatest ever run, which I think is very amusing. Just go figure. The reality of the situation is that something needs to there needs to be a quick fix. Someone needs to put a band-aid on just to kind of get Arsenal to the end of this season. What is realistically your expectation for this season? Where would you expect Arsenal to finish right now, considering what current run of form they've had?
I think similar to last season, to be honest. I think if you can finish top 8, 7th, 8th, it's probably where we're at. It's a congested league. It's a strange league. You put 2 or 3 wins together and you rocket up it. So it's difficult to say in that sense. And we've got some, I think we've got West Brom next, followed by Newcastle. So we've got some fairly kind fixtures coming up where suddenly you're in the top half of the table and the world looks a lot better. But for me, realistically, top 8, if you're really hoping top 6, top 4 is beyond us. There's no way, but I would think probably somewhere between 6th and 8th at this point. And then you've got to hope you can put a good one together in the Europa League. I think we're going to have to prioritise that second half of the season because that's a route back into the Champions League for us. It's a massive carrot. We need that money and we need that platform. So I would think Arteta's going to really prioritise it. We've got a difficult draw with Benfica straight out the gate in the knockout round. So I would say somewhere in there. And in terms of a quick fix, we're linked with Isco at the moment in January, and I'm not sure there is a quick fix for us internally or externally. I think it's going to be down to giving the youth a chance, balancing it with experience, getting Partey fit and back in the team is crucial. And if you can bring someone in as a ball-winning, out-and-out defensive midfielder alongside him to give him that up and down platform, you're set, because that isn't El Neni, it isn't Xhaka, it isn't Ceballos, it isn't recalling Guendouzi from loan. So we have to look at that in January maybe, but I don't think the money's there. So I don't think there's going to be just some saviour that swoops in January and suddenly propels us up the league. It's not going to happen.
Mikel Arteta's had the worst start of an Arsenal manager, like I said, since the 70s. Obviously, I know you're not a knee-jerk reaction fan like a lot of people are. As soon as things go bad, people are screaming finger in and every other, ludicrous statement under the sun. How much longer should Arteta get? And should he get extra time? Should he drag them back into a top kind of 8 position, which is where you'd like to see them finish? Do you think he should get more of an opportunity next season if that's the case? Or do you think if he fails to make that, he should be gone?
You've got to give him to the end of the season, I think, and see where he finishes. It's got to be till the end of the season and then look at where we finished. If we finished outside of the European places, whether that's through the league, through the Europa League or through the Cup, whatever, if we don't have European football next season and the money that brings with it, then I think you have to make a change. I like Arteta. I do think that he's got a philosophy where he wants to get the club to, that we just do not have the tools at the moment. And, when he worked with Pep at Man City, that first season, they struggled a bit, finished 3rd or 4th in the league, then went and won the title with 100 points because they spent 250 million on fullbacks and a couple of holding midfielders and a keeper. We're not going to be spending 250 million in a summer to take us from being an average team at this moment in time to a very good team. It's not going to happen. So he's got a much slower process of building. So we've got to be patient. But if you're not getting that European football and you're not getting the income from that, you're not going to be able to build further up the league. So this is a case of he's going to have to coach his way out of it, not buy his way out of it. And that's a massive challenge. I mean, is he 38? I mean, this is his first job in management, coming into a huge job, not just in terms of it being Arsenal and the stature of the club, but in terms of the state we're in and the squad that we've got versus the ambition. So it's difficult. And you look at it and say, who are you going to go out and bring in who's going to do a better job at this moment in time? I don't think there's too many names out there who we can realistically go and get, because Allegri is the one name that will keep being mentioned as kind of the free agent. He is above Arsenal, realistically, at this moment in time. His level of ambition is over and above where Arsenal are. And, Thomas Tuchel, who's just been binned off by PSG, it's another Emery. You're doing the same thing. You're bringing in another guy who plays decent football. They're not great defensively. He's used to managing some big name players, likes to spend a bit of money, and likes to work with young players, which he showed at Dortmund. I don't think he's a step up. I don't think he takes us to the next level. So again, I think at some point you've got to stick a little bit, realize it's going to be a slow rebuilding process, and there's going to be pain along the way. I think fans will stomach it far more with young players in the team. If Martinelli, Saka, Smith Rowe, Willock, Maitland-Niles, if those guys are inconsistent, if they make mistakes, fans will give them a chance. They're young. You expect it of young players. The majority of those are academy products. They're local boys. They've come through the system. They have that connection with fans. That buys you time as a manager. And I think that's why Arteta has kind of gone down that route, along with the fact that Willian's been injured and Aubameyang's been injured, and his hand was forced a little bit. But he has to kind of stick now with giving young players an opportunity and having a young core to the team, because the experienced players aren't cutting it. That's how he gets his patience. It's not a case of we have an unlimited amount of time, but review it at the end of the season, because chopping and changing managers mid-year, when you've got, unless you're trying to avoid relegation, which I don't think we are realistically, isn't going to work for you. We're not going to go out and get Big Sam from fucking West Brom and start lumping it up and just sign in Cenk Tosun from Everton as a target man and just go, like, it's not going to happen. So it's stick with Arteta till the end of the season, because I do think he's got a vision for the club. A lot of it really is down to whether the club are going to back him fully by bringing in the players he needs to realise it.
We like to get passionate, but not nearly as much as the boys at Arsenal Fan TV. Now, I appreciate they have their place on YouTube. Alex was quite vocal about how much it bothered him, because he felt like the toxicity of it put a lot more pressure on the club, and particularly the fans as well, because all of a sudden, because fans are very, I don't want to be rude, but overall, we're all the same. We're all quite fickle at times, and we draw off of the energy of things that we see in the media, whether that be professional media or, in their case, a more independent style media. Either way, their premise seems to be one of Arsenal are shit. Let's fucking make a dime out of it. That's how it feels to me. When you watch it, do you have any particular feelings to it? Are you passionate about it? Do you just not give a shit? Or do you think that they're actually in some way being even more divisive and hurting the club from a more exterior position?
I think they're just... Every club has that fan TV element. They're not massively unique, but they have been given far more mainstream notoriety than any others. You don't see the Tottenham versions. You don't see the Man United version or the Chelsea version being put at the level of Arsenal Fan TV, where it's discussed on Sky Sports, or where they have, presenters from Arsenal Fan TV being a regular contributor on what's going on at Arsenal on Sky Sports. He doesn't have a fucking clue. He's got no idea what's going on. He's just standing outside the Emirates. What are you talking about? So I don't know why there's been that main level spotlight put on them. It's because it's comical for everyone, because it's embarrassing, right? It's just kind of embarrassing. Look, they're doing their thing. They're making their money. I don't have a problem with that. I think fair play. Got to make your money how you can. That doesn't bother me. I think I do agree it puts more pressure on the club. And I think they were instrumental. They really started the Wenger out stuff. And because that was kind of found on one YouTube video, it was found to be amusing. So it kind of went viral. And then the Wenger out kind of trend started from that point on. I'm not saying that Wenger should have stayed forever. I'm saying that it just created a toxic culture in the stadium. I've not been for a few years, partly because of where I live is so fucking far away now. But when I was going, it was just not a happy place to be to go and enjoy football. Even if we were playing reasonably well, it wasn't a case of when Arsenal's backs were against the wall, the fans were behind them, like you get at most other stadiums around the country. It was, we're against you as well. So not only are you playing against your away fans, not only are you playing against your opposition, you're playing against your own fans at home. Someone misplaces a pass in the 4th minute and we're on their backs. What the fuck are we doing? This is literally mental. And it felt like Arsenal Fan TV does feed into that to a massive extent. And it just become a little bit of a spiral where it started with the players underperforming, them hopping onto it and overblowing it. And that then kind of feeding in, and it's just kind of became a downward spiral. And it still feels like it could be the case now. They are reactionary because you win a game and they talk about the players as Ballon d'Or contenders and we've got the best manager in the world. We've got our Arsenal back and all of that. We lose a game and everyone's shit. We need to sell the entire club, burn it down and start again. So it is just kind of, the reactions are extreme. So I don't particularly watch it, but if you watch it for entertainment value, that's absolutely fine, but you take it at that rather than these are uber knowledgeable people about, what's going on or the inside of the club. It's that they're extremely passionate and they're making money from it. And it's, that's fair play. You crack on. They're an entertainment medium, nothing more. For me, when I watch my Arsenal content, I actually watch journalists like Charles Watts, who works at Goal. He's the Arsenal correspondent for Goal. He's got a YouTube channel, and it's just balanced. He actually has contacts within the club, so he's able to give a fair amount of information. He was the one who broke the Thomas Partey story on deadline day. It was rubbished by other journalists, and obviously he was borne out to be right. He's got good contacts within the club, and he's someone that's worth watching because then what's been printed in the paper or what's been talked about online, how much of it is bullshit. He's a good arbiter for that. So I don't really watch Arsenal Fan TV because it's just knee-jerk. If we're over the top ludicrous and start talking about how everything is shit, more people click on it because they think that we're ridiculous and we earn more money. So it's not my bag.
That's exactly why this video will get 5 views and their ones will
I
get...
know. I know.
Exactly.
It is what it is.
It's also worth pointing out they did have Piers Morgan as a guest once. So,
They had Gary Neville. Gary Neville's been on it. Because
Neville loves it, doesn't he? Any excuse to shit on the arse.
And Micah Richards, to be fair, he went on there in defence of Arsene Wenger. And Micah Richards is, he mentioned it the other week when Arsenal lost. I can't remember what game it was. There's been so many. Where Micah sort of brought it up and said, Arsenal Fan TV are putting too much pressure on the players. And look, if you're a professional footballer and you're not, 17, 18, 19, you're 27, 28, 29, and what some bloke off the street's opinion is, where he thinks you're shit, if that's making you scared to play football, you've got to be asking yourself questions about whether you're in the right profession, to be honest. Just mentally, are you resilient enough to be playing a game which is in the public spotlight? Not everyone is. I don't agree, or I don't accept that as a reason. I'm not going to sit here and say Arsenal Fan TV are responsible for every bad result, because they're not. I just think they contribute to the toxic atmosphere around, which is more keenly felt when fans are in stadiums. So it's not really been an excuse this season.
Fair enough. Pretty succinct. So anything else you want to add to it, mate, before we wrap it up? The thing with Arsenal that I want to see now is just players who have got that bit of guile, who are willing to take risks. I don't care
if someone gives the ball away trying to make a pass in the final third, I don't care if someone makes a run and gets caught offside. That doesn't bother me. It bothers me when we're playing sideways and backwards and we give it away and we concede that way. That's what bothers me. So I want to see an Arsenal now that play with intent and purpose rather than, well, we've got possession. And it feels like that happened against Chelsea. It feels like it happened second half against Brighton. And now it's just about maintaining that. And yes, those young players need to keep their place, but they can't play every game between now and the end of the season. So when a Willian or a Pepe comes back into the side, they have to play with that same way. I think Pepe has got an amazing amount of ability. I think he's got £72 million worth of ability in his left foot. What he doesn't have is the consistency. And he's just one of those players where I don't think Arteta puts an arm around him. I think Arteta's like, look, the last manager didn't want you. I don't fucking want you either, to be honest. So it just feels like maybe it's not going to work out for him, and it's not going to be connected to his ability. It's going to be connected to just the environment that he's been brought into and the way that he's been personally managed, which is frustrating when you've spent 72 million quid on a player. You would think you'd do everything you can to get the best out of that player. It doesn't feel like it's happened with him. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of work and a lot of decisions that need to be made in the summer over a lot of players. There is, Lacazette. I like Lacazette, as I said, but he's coming it'll be in the last year of his contract in the summer. He's 30. You've got to make a decision there. You either give him a new contract or you sell him while the selling's good. You've got to make the right business decision for me. There's a lot of tricky decisions for Arteta or whoever is manager. But I think it's just time now for hopefully a couple of wins. The media just start to back off a little bit. Give us just a bit of breathing space to go and play without constant scrutiny and speculation. And they, fuck off and start talking about Solskjaer going out in the Champions League again, or Frank Lampard losing 3 away games in a row because Chelsea is shit, or whatever. Like, let's focus on something, anything else. Or the fact that, I think Tottenham haven't won in the last three games. Let's start talking about how Mourinho's fraud again. Let's bring all that shit back. Let's roll out the classics and leave Arteta alone.
That doesn't get as many clicks though, mate. That's the problem. People enjoy it, don't they? That's why Arsenal TV is as popular as it is, because they can bait in the clicks. People want to see people getting. It's just classic modern day media, unfortunately. That's the reality of it. It's something that I mentioned quite a lot when I spoke to Alex about it, is the fact that people are far more excited about watching a ship sink than they are than watching a ship get built. So
yeah. Well, if you look, I mean, if Arsenal Fan TV get 500,000 views on a video, 400,000 of them aren't Arsenal fans. The vast majority of them are Tottenham fans going, look at these
great time.
That's what it is, so, and that's fine. That's fair enough. It's the same. There's Mark Goldbridge, the Man United fan on YouTube, who gets similar numbers, but he gets those numbers mostly when Man United lose or are playing terribly. That's when he gets clicks, because it's funny to watch him lose his shit. I watch that more than Arsenal Fan TV because I'm an Arsenal fan, finding someone wanting to laugh at a Man United fan's struggles, So, not that they're struggling now, which is annoying. But, so I do get the fact that it is that clickbait, but they're not preaching to other Arsenal fans for the most part. They're preaching to fans of every other club who are like, this is brilliant. And that is, I think, what frustrates me with Arsenal Fan TV is you are projecting toxicity, you're projecting division, and you're projecting a reactionism around the club to the rest of the world, rather than a bit of unity and we're going to get behind the manager or we're going to get behind the players. There doesn't really seem to be much of that from them, to be honest.
No, we'll leave it there though, mate. Thank you very much for joining us to chat about Arsenal. It's a pleasure. If we can drag you out of that incredible schedule of being a brand new father, we'll get you back on a bit more regularly. Hopefully next time you're back on, Arsenal will have actually. Well, I mean, I don't really. I kind of want to see your reaction if you lose to Fat Sam, because I feel like that might be a slightly more aggressive version of this podcast.
That might be me on the phone in the car so that I can shout during nap time, because I really don't like that gravy chugging cunt at all.
It's fair. That's what a way to leave it. We'll leave it there. Yeah, if you've enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen, obviously like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. Don't really care, to be honest. Not going to beg anyone to do anything, but hopefully this is at least giving you some sort of fairly decent, unbiased, partial insight into what it's like to be a genuine Arsenal fan and not just some raging lunatic. So yeah, we'll leave it there.